Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Almassian. Today is a crazy day as I was trying to prepare this live stream. My internet has stopped only 1 hour before the live stream. I had to run and bring new cables so that I can present this live streaming for you. And now, just a few seconds before the live stream, I dropped a big glass of water over my workspace. It's like somebody is pushing me not to do the live streaming today, but here I am, here, safe, and my equipment are still safe, hopefully, and everything is working. Let me know in the comments below if my voice is sound and clear. Thank you very much for joining me in today's live streaming. Today we are discussing again Israel, Palestine, and also I will discuss some of the issues in Syria and Ukraine eventually at the end of this video. At the beginning, we will see that the allies of Israel, especially from the United States and some of the European countries, are tacitly telling the Israeli side that they have to tone down a little bit and also take into consideration the civilian casualties in the Gaza Strip. Not that because they want less civilian casualties, but because it's becoming too embarrassing for them in front of the general public and in front of the public opinion, and especially that there are so many people nowadays in European countries, in Western countries, they are no more supporting Israel. Please bear in mind that one of the main powers or strengths of Israel is the public support of the international public to Israel. And before I continue this conversation, I can see in the comments below some of you guys are spitting hate. The hate is not tolerated on this YouTube channel. I will block one of these commentators now, ban user and delete this comment. If you're here to spew anti-Semitic comments or anti-Islamic comments or anti any Christian comments, I do not tolerate that, guys. I'm not here spreading hate. I'm here spreading education for you and for the general public. So if you're here to curse a religion or people who believe in a religion, it's not the place. This channel is not the place. You can go somewhere else. I'm here to spread awareness. I'm here to tell stories and analyze political issues, and not I'm not a populist person. I'm just trying to spread education and knowledge to the people who want to understand what's happening in the Middle East. So at the beginning, the allies of the Israelis are telling tacitly to Netanyahu that he has to give some pause and he has to drop probably smaller bombs because the casualty death toll is too high, and especially with the footage coming with the children and everything from the Gaza Strip, it's horrible. They cannot really hide this anymore from their public. Secondly, there are the rivals of Netanyahu in Israel. They're taking advantage of the carnage and they're taking advantage of the situation that Netanyahu has put himself in, and they're trying to become the next prime minister. And then we will see that there are rabbis and there are even doctors in Israel. I don't know if we can really call them rabbis or doctors. They're actually calling for bombing the hospitals in the Gaza Strip. And then we will see that Netanyahu is planning on occupying the Gaza Strip indefinitely, forever. This is what he said today on one of the interviews that he conducted. And one of the journalists in Israel, he's predicting the end of Netanyahu because of that, and he thinks that a less radical government will come to power soon in Israel. Let's see if it will happen. And finally, there will be the journalist Gideon Levy. He is explaining why some Israelis, or the percentage of the Israelis, are supporting their government policies toward the Palestinians and toward the Gazan people. So, Marcelo, he says, Hi, Kevok, I would like to invite you to chat with us in our channel aimed to Portuguese-speaking people. How can I contact you? I think I received your email, my friend. I'm really sorry that I couldn't come back to you. I was really, really overwhelmed with lots of work. I will do my best to answer to your email tomorrow. Thank you again for reminding me. I saw the email. I couldn't read it all, but I will definitely come back to you tomorrow. So let's start with the allies of the United States. The allies of the United States are now pressuring against the Israelis, against the Netanyahu government, and this is the New York Times. They say under scrutiny over Gaza, Israel points to civilian toll of U.S. wars, because the Americans are telling that they have to be careful, and the Israelis are telling them, Netanyahu is telling them, but you have done the same in the past. Israeli officials say it is impossible to defeat Hamas without killing innocents, a lesson they argue Americans and their allies should understand. This is like the Israelis are telling the Americans, you committed yourself war crimes. Why are you even trying to lecture me about human rights? Facing global criticism over a bloody military campaign in Gaza that has killed thousands of civilians, Israeli officials have turned to history in their defense. In public statements and private diplomatic conversations, the officials have cited past Western military actions in urban areas dating from World War II to the post 9/11 wars against terrorism. Their goal is to help justify a campaign against Hamas that is claiming thousands of Palestinian lives. So, if you are if you're really smart and you understand this comment that is made by the Israeli side, it seems to me that Israel is telling the United States that you committed war crimes, so I'm also allowed to commit war crimes. It's not telling that I'm not committing war crimes in the Gaza Strip. It's saying it is okay to commit war crimes because you committed yourself war crimes in the past. This is what I understood from this first paragraph. I don't know what about you. Let me know. They give exactly the example of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Imagine that. And by the way, I made a very long uh, video about Hiroshima and Nagasaki and how the Americans dropped two atomic bombs that were unnecessary at all, and they killed 200,000 civilians. So the Israelis are telling in Hiroshima and Nagasaki as many as 200,000 civilians perished after the United States dropped atomic bombs to force Japan's surrender. And this is actually factually wrong, historically wrong. The Japanese were already surrendering when the Americans dropped two atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and because they did that, because they wanted to send a message to the Soviet Union of what is expecting them in the future as a superpower when this war is over. Human rights advocates and many governments in Europe and the Middle East scoff at that. They accuse Israel of committing war crimes in the weeks of airstrikes that have leveled entire city blocks in Gaza, destroying schools, mosques, and other seemingly non military targets. Israel says it is impossible to defeat its enemy without killing innocents, a lesson that Americans and their allies should understand. During Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to Israel after the October 7 Hamas attacks, Israeli officials privately invoked the 1945 US atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's like there is a competition between the United States and Israel to point finger to each other and say, "But you committed more horrendous war crimes in the past. You remember America when you bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki and you killed 200,000 people? I didn't even kill 10,000 people yet. So what are you speaking about? Your track record is worse than mine. And you dropped two atomic bombs. I didn't do that yet. Although one of the ministers in the Israeli cabinet, he called on using atomic bombs or nuclear bombs against the Gaza Strip. And I don't know what kind of idiotic person that is to ask for use of nuclear, even if it's a tactical nuclear weapon, on a very small area without contaminating the waters, without contaminating the neighboring areas that are Egyptian and the Israeli settlements. It's just like hilarious. So they say in any combat situation, like when the United States was leading a coalition to get ISIS out of Mosul, there were civilian casualties. Mark Regev, an Israeli government spokesperson, said in an October 24th interview with PBS. Mr. Regev said that Israel's ratio of Hamas fighters to civilians killed compares very well to the NATO and other Western forces in past military campaigns. So basically, Israel is telling the Americans and NATO that you're not better than me. You have done worse war crimes, and for me, this seems like legit that I have killed over 10,000 civilians now in the Gaza Strip. 4,000 of them are children, and to be honest with you, the Americans in Raqqa and in Mosul, they carpet bombed the city. They killed thousands of people, innocent people, because they claimed fighting terrorism. That was horrendous. That is true, but two wrongs doesn't make anything right. It is impossible to determine the ratio accurately, he says. More than 10,000 people have been killed in Gaza over the past month, 40% of them children, according to the health ministry there. It is unknown how many might have been Hamas militants. I can tell you how many of them might have been Hamas militants. If you want to know that, you can check the ratio. You can see that the percentage of the kids are 40%. You can see that the percentage of the women are between 20 to 30%, and then 10% are elderly. So 20% of them are men. So if you consider all of these men who died in the past 3 weeks to 4 weeks in the Gaza Strip, all of them are combatants. That means probably they have killed 2,000 Hamas. This is the maximum. And you know very well that not everyone is a Hamas fighter. Of 2.2 million people in the Gaza Strip, only 40,000 of them maximum are Hamas fighters. So just do your calculations and you will see probably they killed a few hundred Hamas fighters, and the ratio is probably 2% to 98%, 98% civilian and 2% of militant groups. So in this difficult situation for Netanyahu, and now that the even their allies are saying like, little bit careful with what you're doing, you have to give a little bit pause. There are other people in the in Israel, they're trying to take advantage of this, right? Because they want to present themselves as the reasonable one, and they want to paint Netanyahu as the crazy one. Not that Netanyahu is not crazy, but because they want to use this and exploit this for their advantage so that they can advance their careers once again, because they were sidelined in the past few years and they have lost their whether credibility or the powers. So they're trying to present themselves as an alternative now for Netanyahu. And one of these people is Ehud Barak. And if you don't know Ehud Barak, he was the former prime minister and I think also was the defense minister of Israel. He says Israel has only weeks to defeat Hamas as global opinion sours, former prime minister Ehud Barak says. So he gave an exclusive interview to Politico. The former prime minister and chief of the Israeli Defense Forces also suggested a multinational Arab force could have to take control of Gaza after the military campaign to help usher in a return of Mahmoud Abbas's Palestinian Authority to take over from Hamas. Even with that change of the political order in Gaza, however, Barak stressed the return of to diplomacy aimed at the creation of a Palestinian state was a very remote prospect. Look, if this what Barak is proposing is not very different from what Netanyahu is proposing. Netanyahu is also calling for the complete annihilation of Hamas, and Barak is also calling for the complete annihilation of Hamas, and they want for Mahmoud Abbas to rule the Gaza. For me, Mahmoud Abbas is just an American asset. Mahmoud Abbas is just a clown in West Bank who is just pursuing and following the American dictates, and he is just um, whatever the Americans want, he just follows. Just a few days ago, he was shaking hands with Antony Blinken 2 days ago, and while the American bombs were falling over the heads of the Palestinians, if he has any dignity in him or any, if he put the Palestinian interest in his heart, he would put his differences with Hamas aside, and he would at least, at least, uh, cancel his meeting with Blinken, and like at least also cancel his security coordination with the Israeli side. And for those who don't know, guys, the so-called government of Mahmoud Abbas in West Bank, the last time he was elected was in 2006 or 2008. Since then, I don't remember that there was even elections in the West Bank. So he's just sitting there claiming to be the president of the Palestinian Authority, and he's supported by the United States and the rest of the Western world, and he's not giving anything to the Palestinian people. He's coordinating with the Israelis. He's coming after anyone who is who is resisting the occupation. He's imprisoning people and even killing prisoners in the jails for opposing him or opposing the Israeli occupation. So bringing the government of Mahmoud Abbas to the Gaza Strip is not going to change anything. It's just the same as eliminating Hamas. So they just want to bring another Palestinian faction that is very pro-Israel and very pro-Hamas, very pro-American in this regard. So Barak says the sympathy generated toward Israel in the immediate wake of October 7, when Hamas launched the deadliest terrorist attack on Israel in the Jewish state's 75-year history, was now diminishing. He worried. This is what I mentioned a few times, guys, and I said the public opinion is very important, and now they're losing this war of narratives and information warfare, and they're losing the public opinion around the world. And you can see, if you now ask 100 people in the streets in Europe, and there's lots of people who are who don't want to support Israel anymore, and they, because they don't want to see all this footage, all these pictures coming from the Gaza Strip, dead babies every day. Like the ratio is very high, 4,000 babies in 3 weeks. How many of them are dying per day? 200 children per day? It's a crazy number, right? People at the end of the day, they have hearts, they have morality, and they don't want to see this type of imagery coming from the Gaza Strip. And who's committing this? It's Israel. So it's very difficult now to support Israel. And this is what Ehud Barak believes, and this is what I also believe. And this is, so time is now playing against the Israeli side. And I think after what Barak said, and I have read to some of the experts as well, they all agree that the time of Israel has probably now 1 week to try to finish this job in the Gaza Strip, which is an impossible, in my opinion, time frame. They cannot do that. 1 week is very little time for them to achieve this goal. So let's see how this will end up. I think till the 11th of this month, which is on Saturday. On Saturday, Nasrallah will speak again. I think from the last speech of Nasrallah, he just gave a time for the Americans to pressure on the Israelis to end this carnage against an onslaught against the Gaza. So if they don't do that, this will have the next time there will be a different talk, in my opinion, next Saturday if Nasrallah speaks. He says, quote, "You can see the window is closing. It's clear we are heading toward friction with the Americans about the offensive. America cannot dictate to Israel what to do, but we cannot ignore them," he said, in reference to Washington's role as the main guarantor of Israel's security. "We will have to come to terms with the American demands within the next 2 or 3 weeks, probably less." Barak added it would take months or even a year to extirpate the Islamist militant group Hamas. So, as I said, the next 1 week or 2 weeks, that's not enough. He says Barak believes this will take months or a year to eliminate Hamas from the Gaza, the main war aim set by Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet, but noted Western support was weakening because of the civilian death toll in Gaza and fears of Israel's campaign sparking a much broader and even more catastrophic war in the region. So, two reasons, one of which is the high death toll. Not that they care about it, but they are worried about the public opinion and the backlash happening in Western countries. Hundreds of thousands of people I saw last week were demonstrating and calling for ceasefire and end this carnage and onslaught against the Gaza Strip. And this will become, the numbers will go really like they will increase dramatically if this carnage continues in the Gaza Strip. Western nations are also anxious about their nationals among the 242 hostages Hamas is holding captive in Gaza, he continued. Listen to the public tone, and behind doors, it is a little bit more explicit. We are losing public opinion in Europe, and in a week or two, we will start to lose governments in Europe. And after another week, the fiction with the Americans will emerge to the surface. So, as predicted by some experts, the Americans gave some time window, time for the Israelis to wage this military operation and the aerial bombing and the onslaught against the Gaza, but they don't have an open end time. They're not going to wait for the Israelis another year or month or two. This is according to Barak. In my opinion, this is relatively accurate because the Americans they see that the street is turning its back to Israel, and without support of the public, people will always ask the question: Why are we sending billions of dollars worth of aid, especially military aid, to Israel? Why are we doing this in our names? And then remember that these politicians who are signing and voting for this type of aid to Israel, they will be re-elected and there will be elections, and these people also care about their career. And whether you receive financial support from APAC or from any Israeli lobby in the United States, that's not enough. That's only enough to finance your military, your electoral campaign. But you will also need votes. So if the people turn their back against you, you will not receive their votes. And despite the Israeli support, the Israeli lobby support, you will not be in a position of power again, and you will lose your career and you will lose your money. So these politicians also care about their private interest, in my opinion. So they are pressuring on Israel now to stop what they are doing there. But despite these calls, as I told you, they are crazy calls, guys. I was mind blown when I read these reports, and they are rabbis. They are asking Netanyahu. So this is coming from the Newsweek. Israeli rabbis call on Netanyahu to bomb Gaza hospital. An Israeli journalist has shared a letter he says has been signed by dozens of rabbis. Let me just zoom in a little bit. An Israeli journalist has shared a letter he says has been signed by dozens of rabbis, which states there would be no religious prohibition for Israel's forces to strike a hospital that contained the enemy. What do you think, guys, about this? Is this even religious? Is this even allowed in Judaism to call for such a thing? And it's the massive this the missive. Just a second, let me. This page is funny. The missive posted on Monday on the Telegram channel of prominent media figure Amit Segal is addressed to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and mentions by name the Al Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, which is the Strip's largest medical complex. You remember how many times the Israelis were saying, "We don't bomb the hospitals, we don't do this, and we don't do that." Like it's. There are calls by civilians that I saw videos and now rabbis, and also, guys, also imagine this. I have never seen anything more disgusting than this. Israeli doctors urge the bombing of Gaza hospitals. This is from the 5th of November. This was only 2 days ago. About 90 Israeli doctors have signed a letter calling for the bombing of hospitals in Gaza. Only last week, dozens of prominent Israeli rabbis had already assured Israeli leaders that they have a right to bomb Al Shifa hospital in Gaza, and this week's letter signed by Doctors for the Rights of IDF Soldiers urges the bombing of any and every hospital in Gaza. I'm just speechless. Those are doctors, guys. Those are doctors. The letter states in no uncertain terms that due to suspicion of terrorist activity, the hospitals are a legitimate target for annihilation. Like, look at the wordings. A legitimate target for annihilation. They claim that ambulances that are evacuating patients to the south in order to be treated elsewhere are at their disposal. It doesn't mention that these ambulances too are being bombed by Israel or that the south is also being mercilessly pummeled. The doctors claim that the residents of Gaza are the ones who brought their annihilation upon themselves. So they are basically blaming the victim here. They say the residents of Gaza are the ones who brought their annihilation upon themselves. And at the same time, those are the same people who say that Palestinians in Gaza are victims of Hamas, as just like the Israelis are victims of Hamas. They don't like, they have to choose which narrative is more correct. Are the people in Gaza support Hamas or they don't support Hamas? Because according to this letter by the doctors, they say the residents of Gaza are the ones who brought their annihilation upon themselves, echoing the genocidal rhetoric of centrist Israeli politicians who have even claimed that the children of Gaza have brought this upon themselves. So I'm really confused here now. If Netanyahu is a right wing or they call him a radical, how about the centrist? Like, this is coming from a centrist Israeli politician who claimed that the children of Gaza have brought this upon themselves. And this, if this is coming from the center, then what is coming from the right? The doctors apply the terms. Look at the terms, guys: snakes, wasps, and terrorist nests in the dehumanization of the enemy, which appears to be expanded from Hamas to the whole of the Palestinian territories. So this is the letter that they published, and this is what they called for according to this translation. And to be honest with you, I'm a little bit shocked. I'm not that surprised that it's coming now. And if you want to read the entire letter, I'll post it now in the comments here. You can go and read the letter also by yourself and just make up your mind by yourself, guys. What do you think about this letter? I'm not going to read the entire letter for you now, but they're calling the Palestinian snakes, wasps, terrorist nests, and the residents of Gaza are the ones who brought their annihilation upon themselves. The doctors of the Gaza Strip, they responded to this 90 or 100 Israeli doctors who called on their government to bomb the Gaza hospitals. Let's see what they have to say about this.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحن أطباء قطاع غزة ونيابة عن أطباء العالم أجمع نعتبر سفراء للسلام ومنقذي الأرواح، وحلفنا الأيمان والقسم على الحفاظ على الأرواح البشرية، ولهذا لا يجوز أن نخون القسم ونخون المهنة الطبية السامية. وما قام به أطباء إسرائيليون في داخل الكيان الصهيوني يعتبر خيانة للمهنة الطبية السامية وخيانة للأمانة الطبية، وهو طلبهم من القوات الإسرائيلية أن تقوم بتدمير المستشفيات على من فيها من طواقم طبية وجرحى ومرضى وشهداء، وعليهم المسؤولية الكاملة إذا حصل لا قدر الله أي شيء في المستشفيات. وعليه نطلب ونطالب كل من له علاقة بالطب والصحة، منظمة الصحة العالمية، منظمات حقوق الإنسان، بمحاسبة هؤلاء المطالبين بتدمير المستشفيات على ساكنيها، بتدمير المستشفيات على العاملين بها والجرحى والمرضى. ونخص بالذكر أن يتم سحب كل التراخيص وسحب كل ما يتعلق بمهنة الطب الذين لا يمثون لها بصلة عن أطباء مستشفيات قطاع غزة. دكتور مروان شفيق الهمس، مدير مستشفى الشهيد محمد يوسف النجار.
So this is the response from the Palestinian doctors to this letter that is calling on the Israeli government to bomb the hospitals in Gaza and saying they are legitimate targets. There are two things I want to mention here. One, personally, I haven't seen criticism from international medical organizations like Doctors Without Borders, what like the WHO about this. I haven't seen. If you saw anything, please let me know. Secondly, guys, I want to ask you something. I want your opinion about this. Let's suppose Hamas is using hospitals and firing from around the hospitals or building bunkers and tunnels under the hospitals as the Israeli government claims, like, right. Everything that Israel says is correct. Let's take that like as an assumption. Will all these doctors who have been targeted, bombed, killed, their families, their friends, their kids, their children, if you were living in the Gaza Strip and Israel came and bombed a hospital and killed 100 people, and there are patients, there are kids, there are lots of people that you know, probably you were treating them, probably your family, probably your friends, probably your kids. If Hamas was using these hospitals and the people there as human shield, is there not a single person in the Gaza Strip who would come and say to Hamas and speak and say, enough is enough? You're using us as human shield. We are dying because of you. Like, I haven't seen one single person from the Gaza Strip who come out and confirm what the Israeli side is alleging, that Israel has built tunnels under the hospitals and they're firing rockets from the hospitals, etc., etc. First of all, Israel has sophisticated satellite systems. They can take images, videos of everything. They have drones. They don't even need satellite. They have drones. And if it's true, they can show us the evidence, but they're not showing us any evidence. Let's suppose they're blind, that they cannot see anything. Isn't there anyone in the Gaza Strip who would come out and say to Hamas, enough is enough, you're using us as human shield? What if this entire allegation is inaccurate, which probably is the case? In my opinion, Gaza is a very small place, right? Of course, they are in urban areas, they're in streets, etc. But you cannot convince me that Hamas is firing rockets and missiles from hospitals and fighting under the hospital, and you cannot show me one single evidence for that. And if you don't have an evidence, you cannot convince me that there is no one in the Gaza Strip, out of frustration, out of emotional, let's say, unwellness, like if somebody loses his child or somebody that is beloved to him or her, he would come out and speak, right? And you don't see these things there. So I believe that these allegations from the Israeli side is very ridiculous, and they are purposely, deliberately bombing the hospitals there because they want to push the people to the south. They are telling us what they want to do. They are telling us that they want for the people to move south. And why south? Why the Israeli side didn't start its operation from the south to the north? Ask yourself this question. Why do they always tell us that Hamas positions are all in the north? Do you really think that Hamas only has positions in the north? Why didn't they start their military operation in the south and then try to push them to the north? Because if they push them from the south to the north, that means that they have to take them in Israel then. But because they want to push the Palestinians from the north to the south to the borders with Egypt and then forcefully push them to the Sinai. This is the plan. They say it. It's not me. It's not my analysis. I'm just echoing and telling you what they are saying and planning and repeating all the time. So for me, it's quite clear that the hospitals, the churches, the mosques, the schools, the UNRWA, UN workers, and everything, those are just part of the plan. Bomb the hell out of them, m- give the impression that there is nowhere safe in the Gaza Strip, spread desperation, and give them just one route to the south. Go to the south, go to the south, so that they leave to Egypt. So now is the topic of today's video that Netanyahu says Israel will have overall security responsibility in Gaza afterward. So it's not only that they want to crush Hamas, it's not that only they want to cleanse the Gaza Strip from its inhabitants, they want to have a security responsibility in Gaza after the war. And this contradicts what Ehud Barak said in the first article, that he wants to bring the Mahmoud Abbas authority to Gaza. I mean, at the end of the day, Mahmoud Abbas authority is also Israeli, I would say. Israel will keep control over Gaza indefinitely after its war against Hamas ends, Benjamin Netanyahu has stated, saying his country will take overall security responsibility for the territory. Remember, already Israel occupied the Gaza Strip for quite some time, and they were building settlements there, and they withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005 because they came under heavy attacks all the time, and they were losing lots of soldiers, so they had to withdraw from Gaza. Now they want to occupy it back, and they want to build their settlements there, and they want to change the demographics in the Gaza Strip. And this has happened also in the Golan Heights, guys. If you don't know, in the Golan Heights, it's a Syrian territory. They occupied it in 1967. They annexed it in 1981, I think, or 82, 81. And they are changing the demographics. They're just inviting more settlers from around the world to come and settle inside of the Golan Heights so that the Syrian population would become a minority. Asked who should govern Gaza after fighting ends, Netanyahu told ABC News in an interview broadcast on Monday night, those who don't want to continue the way of Hamas, he says. He added, Israel will, for an indefinite period, have the overall security responsibility in Gaza because we've seen what happens when we don't have that security responsibility. I tried to play this video multiple times on The Guardian, but it doesn't play. I don't know why. But according to Netanyahu, he believes that the Palestinians cannot govern themselves. And if they govern themselves, then they will vote for a group like Hamas. So they don't want that. Although Israel was the one supporting the spawn of Hamas in the 80s. They have paved the way for the emergence of Hamas in the 80s because they wanted for an Islamist group to fight against the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, headed by Yasser Arafat. They do this all the time. This is from the same playbook of the Brits. The Brits in the 20s, in the 1920s, guys, the Brits came to Egypt and they started helping the spawn of the Muslim Brotherhood there, the Islamists. Why? Because back then, the people who were fighting against the British mandate, the French mandate in the region, or those were occupiers, right? They were colonizing the region. France occupied Syria and Lebanon, and the Brits occupied Jordan and Palestine and Iraq, and partly also Egypt. So, who were the resistance against the French and the Brits back then? They were the nationalists and the socialists, those who were fighting against the communists, those who were fighting against the occupiers. So they wanted to create a split in the society. So they started supporting the Islamists. And the Islamists are naturally anti-communism, anti-socialism, anti-nationalism. So they started fighting. They created a division in the society so that they fight each other. It's a divide and conquer strategy. In 1970s, late 70s, the Brits and the Americans, they supported the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria so that they fight against the socialist, nationalist, pan-Arabist government in Syria. They created a split, a division in the society. In Afghanistan, they supported again the Mujahideen against the socialist government there in order to create an alternative. This is just the same playbook, guys. And when these Islamists come to power, then it gives the perfect excuse to the Israelis, to the Brits, to the Americans to intervene. I mean, if the enemy is secular, it's a socialist, it's a communist, etc., etc., it's more difficult to frame them as terrorists. But if they are Islamists, it's very easy to frame them as Islamists. And now, because Hamas came to power in 2006, they came to power, they won the elections, and Israelis were very happy to see that because one, this ends any hope for peace talk. because for them, they will say we don't negotiate with terrorists about peace. This is in their interest for Hamas when Hamas came to power in 2006. But Hamas was also, they had a heavy influence by Iran, and the Iranians gave them weapons, and the Iranians also redirected their let's say armed struggle against the Israeli side. Sorry that I feel like I'm gonna sneeze again. It's just a slide when it's on my face. I feel like I'm going to sneeze. So Islamists, guys, most of the time in the Middle East, they were supported by whether the Israelis or by the Americans for divide and conquer strategy. It's a very simple way of dividing societies and pushing them into internal conflicts. This is how they do it. And now we have, I would say, psychopathic people who pretend to care about the Palestinians and the Palestinian lives. And I want you guys to watch this video with me. And when she says every human life matters, be it Israeli or Palestinian. And I want you to tell me in the comments below, do you really believe this woman when she says that the EU is trying to avoid civilian casualties, like they're telling the Israelis to avoid civilian casualties, and that they really think that every human life matters? Do you really think that these people care about the Palestinians? Personally, I believe those people are 100% on the side of Israel, and they're just pretending to be with the Palestinians because the death toll is too high, and the imagery and the footage that is coming from Gaza Strip is too horrible, even for people like them who are 100% in support of Israel, because in front of the public they are getting called out, they are being called out, they are being pressured, and there are hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. Take a look.
As policymakers, we face a dreadful dilemma. Israel has the right to defend itself, while Hamas bunkers, hides fighters, and stores weapons below refugee camps and civilian infrastructure. Hamas is clearly using innocent Palestinians and hostages as human shields. It is horrific, and it is pure evil. And our hearts bleed at the images of small children pulled out from under the rubble. All of us, as democracies and as human beings, have a responsibility to do everything possible to protect civilians who are caught in harm's way. So while Israel has the right to fight Hamas, it is also essential that it strives to avoid civilian casualties and to be as targeted as possible. Because every human life matters, be it Israeli or Palestinian.
I couldn't believe any word that came from the mouth of this woman. Not a single word. And she is even blaming the Palestinians for their death. Like, it's so unfortunate, all this footage coming from the Gaza Strip. My heart bleeds. But Hamas, what can we do? They're using civilians as human shields, but then we also ask the Israelis to be careful, targeted strikes. What kind of BS is this, man? Sometimes when I watch this, I truly ask myself the question, when she sees herself later in video, does she think that she was convincing? Like, does she really think that she convinced and the people will believe her? Because if I was her assistant or aide or somebody in her around her, I would say, lady, I mean, you have to be a little bit more sympathetic, empathetic. And it's really quite obvious that you are 100% on the side of Israel. At least try to change your tone, try to show some more emotions, like lie better, because in my opinion, these politicians, they lie for it's their job, right? It's a career of lying. It's a career of lying, guys. And at least they have to be good in lying, right? This is my problem with these people. It's not like, because my problem is not that you're lying. My problem is that you're lying and you're not convincing. Because I know most of the politicians lie, but at least be good in your profession. And with these people, it's quite obvious that they are lying. And that is why we see lots of backlash in the street. And that's why we see that the popularity of these people are zero. Like, who is this von der Leyen? If she participates in any elections, how much votes does she get? How many people approve this message? How many people accept this message? How many people believe her? It's quite obvious, man. I believe 100 times more the honest people. I respect them, honest people. For example, Lindsey Graham. I despise him, of course, but at the same time, I respect his honesty. Not like von der Leyen, because Lindsey Graham says that Israel has the right to destroy Gaza because its residents are the most radical people on the planet. Be honest with us. Don't lie to us.
Is the administration right that Israel needs to do more to protect civilians in Gaza?
Well, I think Israel is committed to following the law of armed conflict. One thing I want to say for sure is Israel's not engaged in genocide. And then another thing we need to deal with is the whitewashing of the status of people in Gaza. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would love to be free from Hamas, but the most radicalized people on the planet live in the Gaza Strip. They've been taught since birth to kill and hate the Jews. How do you teach math in Gaza? If you had 10 Jews and you kill 6, how many would be left? That's been in their school system. So I'm all for providing humanitarian aid in a fashion that doesn't help Hamas. I'm all for Israel having the time and space to destroy Hamas. I'm all for a new governing regime over the Palestinian people when this is over. And I'm all for Israel and Saudi Arabia reconciling. That's sort of where I'm at.
But no pause? No humanitarian pause?
I don't want to take the pressure off Hamas militarily, but if Israel can find a way to help the humanitarian situation, yes, I'd like to do it. But after World War II, did anybody ask us these questions? You got to realize the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on cities in Japan to end the war. I think this is total war between Israel and Hamas. I want to protect innocent people as much as possible, but I want the world to realize that the radicalized population in Gaza has been going on for over a decade. This will not be easy. When you've been taught from birth to hate the Jews and kill them all and drive them into the sea, and here's what I think, 80% of the people in Gaza support the idea from the river to the sea. That has to change.
Guys, do you realize the similarity between his wordings, rhetoric, literature, and what the Israelis are saying behind closed doors to the American officials about the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? We have reached a point that we're speaking now about how the Americans committed a heinous crime during World War II by dropping 2 atomic bombs and comparing it to what's happening in the Gaza Strip. This is where are we right now, because the people cannot fathom the fact and what is coming out from the Gaza Strip, right? The people are sick and tired of this, and they want to find justifications. They want to find a worse example from the past and compare it to what's happening here. And when you see 200,000 people dead there and it's only 10,000 here, so it's not that worse, you know? This is what they're trying to do. They're playing with the psychology of the people. But who are they fooling? Who are they fooling? Are you guys fooled by these videos when you see, do they really convince you? Like, the people have become so much smarter than in the past, especially after the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. People are questioning almost everything, right? There are, of course, people who follow everything with blindly, but increasing number of people are waking up to the reality. And this Lindsey Graham, is there any war that this guy doesn't support? Like, you feel like he's a weapons seller, you know? he's like in the United States as a trying to find new contractor for the military-industrial complex. So we need war here, we need war there. Pause is not possible. Ceasefire helps Putin. Ceasefire helps Hamas. We need to dump more weapons in Syria. We need to send drones here and there. It's like when I say these people are psychopaths, some people get mad at me and say, "Don't use these words. Don't dehumanize them, etc., etc." But how do you define these people? You let me know if there are better words to describe these people. Oh, I'm really sick and tired of this. I just want to show you very quickly, not in length, this article. And this article, I will post it also in the chat if you want to read the entire thing. From the abyss of the October 7th debacle, a new Israeli political order will rise, similarly to the political shift spurred by the Yom Kippur War, which happened in 1973. October 7 will sentence the end of the long reign of the Likud movement. Extremists will have no place in the new Israeli government. This article is basically arguing that after this war, there will be a moderate government in Israel. I just posted the link now in the description below if you want to read it entirely. That these radicals from the right, as the author Yossi Vertev is arguing, those are the ones who brought Israel to its knees. They have failed on the security level, they have failed on a political level with the judiciary reforms, and then the failure to detect the Hamas attacks, and then the response, which was horrendous against the Gaza Strip. And they think that these radicals will be sidelined, and then there will be a government that comes in Israel that this government believes in peace and coexistence and the establishment of the Palestinian state. I think, as Black Tie said, it's a wishful thinking, and I would like to thank him again for his generous support of Syriana Analysis, and I would like to thank I am Valentina for becoming a YouTube member, and as I promised to Marcelo, I will also come back to him. Thank you so much, guys, for your support of Syriana Analysis. It's a really great help for me. You cannot imagine how much this support are important to me, and this enable me to have the time. Otherwise, I have to spend so much more time to other jobs. I already have another job, so I'm trying to do both together. But if I become 100% independent and when my channel grows more, then I would definitely stop working other jobs and I will just focus on Syriana Analysis. Now, this is a very, very important video I'm going to show you. I'm just going to leave my face. I'm not going to show my face and everything, because I think this is very important video for us to see and understand the mentality that is governing in Israel. And this is, as I told you, he's Gideon Levy, and he says why the Israelis accepting what's happening now in the Gaza Strip, and why so many of them are accepting this onslaught against the Gaza Strip. What ground do they stand on? He is an Israeli Jewish author, journalist, and very critic of Israeli government and Zionism. So I just want you to listen to what he thinks. Is not someone from Hamas, is not someone who is not Jewish or not Israeli. I think this gives him more credibility. Let's take a look.
The Israeli society had surrounded itself with shields, with walls, not only physical walls, but also mental walls. I don't want to get into it because it's another lecture, but I'll just give the 3 principles which enable us Israelis to live so easily with this brutal reality. A, most of the Israelis, if not all of them, deeply believe that we are the chosen people. And if we are the chosen people, we have the right to do whatever we want. B, there were more brutal occupations in history. There were even longer occupations in history, even though the Israeli occupation gets to quite a nice record. But there was never in history an occupation in which the occupier presented himself as the victim. Not only the victim, the only victim around. This also enables any Israeli to live in peace because we are the victims. The other day, Professor Falk spoke about this dual strategy of Israel of being a victim on one hand and manipulating on the other hand. after what happened in Paris and in Copenhagen with the terror attacks, Benjamin Netanyahu came with the notion all the Jews must come to Israel. It's the safest place for the Jews in the world. It's a shelter for the Jews in the world, which is wrong because Israel is today the most dangerous place on earth for Jews. But let's put it aside. It was only 24 hours later when he said Israel is an existential threat under the Iranian bomb. And I asked myself, how can you dare call Jews to come and to join this suicidal project when the Iranians are going to bomb us? But in Israel, everything goes, and both declarations were accepted as the only truth. And here I get to the third set of values which enable us Israelis to live in peace with the occupation. And this is maybe the most crucial one and the worst one. We say victimization, we say it's chosen people. When I say victimization, it goes without saying we have to mention the Holocaust and the unforgettable Mrs. Golda Meir that the American jury had exported to Israel. She said once, this unforgettable woman, that after the Holocaust, the Jews have the right to do whatever they want. But the third set of values is the most dangerous one, and this is the systematic dehumanization of the Palestinians, which enable us Israelis to live in peace with everything, because if they are not human beings like us, then there is not really a question of human rights. And if you scratch under the skin of almost every Israeli, you will find it there. Almost no one will treat the Palestinians as equal human beings like us. I once wrote that we treat the Palestinians like animals, and I got so many protest letters from animal rights organizations, rightly so. But by the end of the day, how many Israelis did ever try for a moment to put themselves in the place of the Palestinians for a moment, for one day? And I want to give you two examples which will demonstrate it. Many years ago, I interviewed then candidate for Prime Minister, Ehud Barak. And I asked him a question which I try to ask in any occasion. Mr. Barak, what would have happened if you would have been born Palestinian? And Barak gave me then the only honest answer he could give me. He said I would have joined a terror organization. What else would have he done? Would he become a poet? He doesn't know to write poems. Would he become a pianist? He's quite a bad pianist, and I doubt if he would have become a collaborator because he is a fighter. And it became a scandal, because how can you dare to put Ehud Barak to think what would have happened if he would have become a Palestinian? And the second incident, briefly, Second Intifada, the city of Jenin, the most closed city in the West Bank, real total siege. I go out from Jenin, I come to the checkpoint, a Palestinian ambulance is parking there with the red lights. I stand after him, no cars can get out of Jenin in those days, no cars can get in, and I wait. The soldiers are playing backgammon in the tent. Usually I know myself, it's better that I don't get into confrontation with the soldiers because it always ends up very badly. So I stayed in the car, but after 40 minutes I couldn't take it, and I went out to the car. From the car, I went first to the Palestinian ambulance driver and I asked him, what's going on? He told me that's the routine. They let me wait 1 hour until they come and check the ambulance. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I went to the soldiers. It became a confrontation, but the question that I asked them, which really brought them to direct their weapons toward me, was one. What would have happened if your father would have been lying in this ambulance? This freaked them out. They lost control. How can I dare to compare between their father and the Palestinian in the ambulance? And this set of beliefs that they are not human beings like us enable us Israelis to live in so much peace with those crimes, ongoing crime for so many years, with losing any kind of humanity, values. I heard today people talk about Jewish values. I must be frank with you, I don't know what are Jewish values. I know what are universal values. Let's not get into it, really.
So this was from Gideon Levy. Unfortunately, he is probably speaking the truth, and there is so much acceptance for the crimes happening against the Palestinians because, according to him, there is a belief that they are the chosen people. There is the belief that they are the only victims, and systematic dehumanization of the Palestinians, and Palestinians are not human beings. I really don't know what to say. I already passed the 1 hour of my time, but I just want to show you this. This guy, actually, he's a research analyst focusing on Palestinian armed groups and non-state actors in the Middle East. He is actually working, guys, for a journal called Long War Journal, and working for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And look at this. He posted this video and he says, Syrian rebels are starting operations against Assad and Hezbollah for their comrades in Gaza. Have any of you understood anything this guy says? Syrian rebels are starting operations against Assad and Hezbollah for their comrades in Gaza. So the Al-Qaeda fighters in Latakia are attacking the Syrian army and Hezbollah to help their comrades in Gaza. How is this even working? Like, the Syrian rebels are actually supported and funded by the United States and Israel, and they're fighting against Assad and Hezbollah to help the Hamas in Gaza. It's like, how can these people even have jobs like this, prestigious jobs in the United States, and keep their jobs and gain all these salaries? It's just beyond me. I just wanted to show you this before. And then you have another clown show here. This time, Zelensky, he says he canceled the elections in Ukraine because of the war in Russia, because nothing is more democratic than canceling the elections in Ukraine. And remember, in Syria, during the height and the peak of the war, when ISIS was expanding, Al Qaeda was occupying, half the country was out of control of the government. The same people who support now Ukraine, they were calling on Assad to resign so that they can hold elections during that carnage and mayhem. And there were 2 elections been held during the war time in Syria that they call dictatorship. And now Zelensky has canceled the elections because of the war. And the last thing I want to show you guys before I leave you here, I think Zelensky is going back to his original job, and he is going to become a comedian again. And I think this is the best that fits him and suits him, this job. And here he says he's begging for more money from Western countries. So see what he says.
If you can't give us some financial support, okay, please give us a credit and we will give you back money after the war. If you can't give us some financial support, okay, please give us a credit and we will give you back money after the war.
What is this? He's begging money all the time, and now he wants money from the European and Western countries and credit. Just give us some money and we will give you after the war. Yeah, this is what happens, unfortunately, when you put the fate and the destiny of your entire country and link it to outside support. We've been warning this for a very long time. Unfortunately, we weren't heard. And unfortunately, that I think that they have pushed now Ukraine under the bus. I will show you a very short video that I did today and just posted it on X Twitter about this case. I said bloodthirsty psychopaths in the US found a new war to support, this time in the Middle East. That's why they are pushing Zelensky's Ukraine under the bus and urging him to strike a peace deal with Russia, because the war has reached a stalemate. Unlike Russia, Ukraine is running out of forces, and the West cannot provide unlimited aid to Ukraine. If you want to watch this video, guys, I'm not sure if I can show it to you because there is a background music. Probably it will be hit by copyright. Let me show you this video before I leave. And after this, but before I leave you, I just want to thank Archie. He says, thank you for your efforts to present the truth. I follow you also on Rumble. Thank you so much, Archie, for your generous support and also following my work. Guys, the link of my Rumble is in the description below. Before you leave this live streaming, please follow me also there. It's very important. Before I'm deplatformed and demonetized from YouTube, it's very important for me that you can also follow my work there when I'm kicked out of YouTube. I also want to thank Johan, who says, love from India, support your work, free Palestine. Thank you so much, Johan, and thank you for your sentiments to my work and toward the Palestinians. It's really great to see that people also from India are in favor of the dignified life for the Palestinians and statehood. And I will end up this with this video analysis, guys, that I posted. It's a very short one, 2 minutes on my X account. Please make sure to follow me on X as well. This is the place I post shorter videos. Let's take a look together. When the Russian offensive began against Ukraine in February 2022, serious people and clear-headed people realized that the warmongering elites in Washington, D.C., who engineered the coup d'etat in 2014 and prepared the conditions for a direct war between Russia and Ukraine, were using the Ukrainians as cannon fodders and a proxy army. These people's opinion was dismissed and framed as Kremlin talking points, because nothing makes you Putinist than caring for the Ukrainian people, right? And trying to spare the lives of tens of thousands of young Ukrainian men who were sent to their tragic death. Almost 2 years later, our warnings turned out to be correct, as the bloodthirsty psychopaths found a new war to support in the Middle East and help Israel in its onslaught against the Palestinians of Gaza. 2 weeks ago, I asked this simple question: can the US economy sustain 2 major wars in Ukraine and Israel at the same time? And it turned out that the US and its allies could not finance 2 major wars. Therefore, American and European officials are quietly telling their Ukrainian counterparts to strike a peace deal with Russia to end the war, which includes concessions from Kiev to reach a deal. The US and the EU are using the same talking points of ours, but only 2 years later. The war has reached a stalemate. The West is unable to provide unlimited aid to Ukraine, and unlike Russia, Ukraine is running out of forces. Additionally, the war in Ukraine has garnered less public attention since the onslaught against the Gaza Strip. And Zelensky is losing his mind, which reminds me of the famous Arabic saying, if you knew, then it's a disaster. And if you didn't know, then it's a greater disaster.
But we are not ready to give our freedom to this terrorist Putin. That's it. That's why we are fighting. That's it. If you can't give us some financial support, okay, please give us a credit and we will give you back money after the war.
Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Thank you so much, really, for tuning in and watching this video till the end. I've been your host, Almassian of Syriana Analysis, and I will see you all tomorrow. Stay tuned.